This is From the Backline, the podcast dedicated to the Whitecaps FC, MLS, and all things soccer. Find us online at 86forever.com or subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Dailey and Jorge Mendoza.
Well, friends, Wednesday evening, it all goes down when the Vancouver Whitecaps face the Montreal Impact in the first leg of the Amway Canadian Championship Final at Stade Saputo. Joining us tonight to help break it down is good friend of the show, Kevin Laramé. Kevin is a contributor at CanadianSoccerNews.com and hosts a number of podcasts, including the Two Solitude podcast and USL Radio with Dwayne Rollins, and Off the Woodworks podcast, which is dedicated to covering everything about the Montreal Impact. Kevin, welcome back to From the Backline.
It's my pleasure. Always a pleasure talking soccer with you guys.
Thanks, man. So, Kevin, before we talk about Wednesday match, we want to dial it back a little bit and talk for a moment about the Impact in general. Before the start of the season, owner Jorge Saputo said that there was a lack of buzz around the Impact. So you fast forward 6 months, and we have seen the Impact come so very close to winning the CONCACAF Champions League. And most recently, they pulled off a bit of a coup by signing a striker Didier Drogba. So would you say the buzz has returned in Montreal?
Yes, and has returned with a vengeance. I think that just the images of Drogba arriving at the airport with about 1,500 fans. It started with just 100, but then people just started piling on, and it just became a crazy atmosphere with different fans. If you're looking at Ivory Coast, and you had the Montreal fans included, it just was a party, and it just tells you a lot have changed in Montreal, and maybe the team, but the perception of the team, the way the own media look at the team now with a Drogba, with the CCL final run. Montreal did have a little trouble after, but now with the Drogba signing, with some injuries, players returning from injury, with the calendar being on their side and a couple of great results in the last couple of weeks, while Montreal is not in the bottom of the standings anymore. Their stands are full. And it's looking pretty good for soccer in Montreal now. Things have changed a lot, like you said, in 6 months. And Jorge Saputo we have to say it, he did put his money where his mouth is. He said there was a lack of buzz, and he did something to change it, and I have to commend him for that.
Kevin, due to the modified MLS schedule to accommodate the CONCACAF Champions League, the Impact did not actually win their first MLS match until May 16th. How is this iteration of the Impact different to the one that started the season?
The big difference is, I think, some players that were not at the 100% fitness are there now. If you're looking at Piatti, who had a surgery in the offseason and was on the mend for the majority of the spring, he did not achieve game shape until almost a couple of weeks ago. Yes, he was doing great things on the pitch, but was not dominating as he is now. Of course, he's a little bit selfish, and that's something he's going to have to work with on the pitch to be more confident on his partners. But players like him, other players are slowly starting to become best in the league. If you look at Laurent Simon, he did need a adjustment period at the beginning of the season, but now he's one of the best defenders in the league. So a couple of players in a situation like this created the fact that the Impact struggled after the CCL, but continued to improve, progress slowly. And now if you're looking at the results of the team in the table, they're in the playoff contention. They're close to it, and they're getting a calendar that's easier with a lot of games at home. They still have a lot of games in hand. If they get points in those games in hand, they're going to stay where they are in the table, and it's looking good for the Impact so far. The thing is, the players changed not that much. There was a couple of movement here and there with Jack McInerney leaving now. There's Venegas, of course, and Drogba. I think Venegas is going to be very interesting for the future because of how he plays with the ball, how he's confident on it, and how he likes to get players off of him while he has the ball. And that is something we're not used to seeing. That little, yes, he's from Central America, but he brings a South American type of flair to the game, combined with Romero and Piatti and Drogba to draw the attention of the defenders. I think those four-player combination is going to change everything for the Impact. And Romero has been doing better lately with a little struggle after the CCL. So really, the CCL created a lull for the Impact, the lack of emotion after such a high. And now, slowly, it's getting to the nitty-gritty of the season. We're past the summer lull in the MLS now. We're in August. It's changing. Players are seeing the end of the race, the end of the marathon that is the season, and slowly looking at the sprint that is the playoffs. And Montreal is there. So I'm surprised for that. The fact that in the last couple of weeks, even though there's been the Patrice Bernier controversy and a lot of things happening outside of the pitch with the Simon situation, the Bernier situation, and the great things happening outside with the great acquisition they made, the Impact have became relevant as never before, and I think it bodes well for the future. And on the pitch, they're looking like a very dangerous team now.
So Kevin, so we're talking about, obviously the bus is back, new innings are coming up, players are getting healthy. So has all this changed the expectations about this team? When you look at the end of 2015, what do you think needs to happen for you to say the Montreal Impact had a successful season?
At the beginning of the season and during the first 6 months of the year, they were talking about the goal was to make the playoffs, the postseason. Now, with the acquisition, it might raise a little bit the expectations. But what I believe is they're still just trying to log that playoff spot, not to put too much pressure on the team right now. Get into the playoff, then you can change your expectations. I think they're still building the team and trying to focus the type of play for making a very deep run in 2016. I think 2015 would be considered bonus. I think we're really looking at the same situation as when DeVayo first joined the team in 2012 late. The first 6 months, it wasn't the best. They slowly learned how to play together, and 2013 was the year where all cylinders were firing with DeVayo scoring. So I think we're looking at the same situation with Drogba and the rest of the team. Don't raise the expectation too much for 2015 and look for 2016 to make a deep run and really have the expectation high for next year.
So, Kevin, let's talk now about some of the Impact's players. I noticed today that there's some word that Justin Mapp is going to become, or he's back and potentially may be available on Wednesday night for the ACC first leg of the final, although Kloppes was a little bit coy on the subject. But just moving a little bit further than that, what about the new prize signing? When will Didier Drogba finally see action on the pitch for the Impact?
There's a small probability that Drogba will start his MLS career, his more Impact career, in the Canadian Championship. He was included in the 30-player roster a couple of weeks ago. Now, there's a big stretch of including him the 30 and seeing if he's going to be on the 18, if even in the 11 tomorrow night. I doubt it. Maybe in the 18, and if Montreal really needs a goal, you put him in late as maybe a gift or as a prize to the fans that are there. I don't know. The 22nd of August is the date that's been circled for the Impact to start Drogba in his first official debut at home to create another great stand filled with people and to create a great atmosphere. I think they're trying to have time to promote it. So August 22nd looks very good right now, but you never know. If needs be, there's a possibility that the tournament that was created by supporters more than a decade ago will have a international star make his debut in that very tournament. So that could be very special for everybody tomorrow night.
So, Kevin, you mentioned a little bit, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. There's been some controversies just recently. Why don't you just bring us up to speed as to what's going on in the camp?
Well, the big controversy last week was Patrice Bernier's situation. It's been brewing for a couple of months, just the fact that he's not necessarily getting a lot of game time. Some supporters and fans think it's unfair for him not to play as much or at all, basically, and they're feeling that he can contribute to the team and to help the team where they need some help in the fact to control the ball late in games, to control the pace, slow down the tempo, and keep possession and make small and smart passes. He's good with that type of play. So people have been claiming for Kloppes to get him, and it's been a controversy slowly brewing. The fact that a lot of media are asking Kloppes question, he's tired of answering the question. He's like, I'm putting the players I think needs to help the team, and sometimes you need to take hard decision. That's been always Kloppes' answers to that question. And Bernier always said, I just want to play. I don't want to create controversy. I don't want to create a big mountain of not really good positive energy. He just want to do his own thing and wanted to play. But last Wednesday before the game, his wife on Facebook wrote a post saying that it would be unfair for you not to start, not to play tonight. It's a big judgmental decision by the coach not to pick you. It's unfair. It's an injustice. and she wrote a big post like this, and she didn't think that it would spread and go viral the way it did, but it did. And it went everywhere. Any media picked it up, everyone as well. They translated, so it basically made it its way all across North America, and it had a situation that needed to be addressed by the club, by the coaches. At the beginning, they were really quiet about it, and the next day, eventually, Patrice Bernier said he's going to take 2-3 days off to relax, to calm, so he took the weekend off to make the situation go down. He came back to training on Monday, but basically, that's the situation, that's the gist of it. And Klopas and Bernier always said that it's okay with each other. There's not necessarily a personal bad feelings involved. And I have to say, I've never been witness to any bad conversation or fights or arguments. Never. It's always been cordial between those two, of what I've seen and what I've been told. Now, Bernier wants to play, and Klopas wants the best 11 players. Is Bernier one of the best 11 players? I don't know. And you have to judge a coach by the result. And lately, result has been pretty decent. They climb into the tables, and there's some progression. So, I'm kind of in the middle of that situation. I'm 50-50 on both sides, and sometimes it's just a coach has to take decisions that are not easy when it's a hometown hero, a hometown star like Bernier. And I think that's basically the reason, is people want to see him, but in a way, maybe Klopas has a part of the answer with the fact that he's not playing him as much, and they're getting good results. So who knows? Who's right, who's wrong? I don't know, but that's the situation.
Mm-hmm. So looking a little bit deeper into the squad, former Whitecaps midfielder Nigel Reo-Coker was an unused substitute for Frank Klopas this past week. What can you tell us about Nigel's season so far, and is Montreal still in love with Reo-Coker?
No, they're not in love with Reo-Coker anymore. It didn't last that long. He had some good stint when he was in the midfield. When they used him at right back, when needs was there to use him, they didn't have a choice. He did have some bad moments, and we're not going to lie, he had a roller coaster season so far, with great performance in the CCL that sometimes in the league were counterbalanced by bad showings. Late in games, he can be a liability with the club, with his speed that left him in the last couple of years, so that could be dangerous. When he starts a game and he's being subbed off at the 60th, 50th minute, it's not too bad, but maybe you don't need to use a substitution for a defensive midfielder that don't necessarily have such an impact on a game to get a result. So when you need to do that, you're losing a sub, so it gives a tactics problem to the coach, having him not perform as well as we need to. And if Donadell and Malice are continuing on this way, Reo-Coker has lost his depth start position. He's close to the same position as Bernier, where there's a lot of people in the midfield. And it's been rumored that in the last couple of weeks he was on the trade block. Obviously, we saw the trade deadline finish this week, and he was not traded. So we'll see, but it's a congested midfield with the Impact, and Reo-Coker has lost his starting position.
So Kevin, just dialing back to the CONCACAF Champions League. Obviously, we spoke about Montreal going deep last year, or what was like the last year version of the tournament. They already have a taste for the CONCACAF Champions League. Has all this altered the opinions about the competition for both the club and the fans in Montreal?
No, I always have the opinion that the competition is important to build your club reputation, to build the brand, but it's not necessary to perform every year well in that competition. The fact that this year they're not in the league, in the Champions League, because of it's the Whitecaps that won the ticket to get there because of their record they had last year. The Impact are fighting to get back next year, but right now they're focusing on the league, and it's been a good change. Your best result need to go in the league this year. You don't have to overthink the situation with the CONCACAF. And if you're looking at the CONCACAF Champions League, outside of Vancouver right now, anytime a Canadian team, twice it happened, to Toronto run and the Montreal run, when it happened, they were done in this season early or having a bad season in MLS. Last year, Montreal, and 3 years ago now with Toronto. So they had no choice but to put all their basket in the CCL. So it's like a redeeming quality to that tournament. But I would take a good MLS run any day over the actual CONCACAF Champions League, because for the masses, for Mr. and Mrs. anyone that comes to the game, the league is that much more important. The CONCACAF is special, but is it important as much? I don't think so.
Yeah, very good point. So why don't we talk now about the matter at hand, and let's talk about the Wednesday night's match between the Montreal Impact and the Vancouver Whitecaps at Stade Saputo. Now, if you were Frank Klopas, how would you choose your squad? And maybe just going on one step further than that, how do you think that Klopas will, or what lineup do you think he'll use on Wednesday night?
Well, you have to take it this way, because you have to always play the guessing game of what is the other team going to do. When you look at Vancouver's schedule the next couple of weeks, mixed with a lot of league games, mixed with CONCACAF Champions League game, with the championship, the Amway Canadian Championship at the same time, they have to take the roster and to play with it. They're going to use some Whitecaps 2 players in some way. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that roster plays in Montreal tomorrow. So that's the type of questions you need to ask yourself. So you need to put your team accordingly. Do you want to make your Drogba and Donadell and Romero and Piatti travel to Vancouver? Maybe not. So if you want to avoid that, maybe you need to win by 2-3 goals. So you need to maybe field a strong team at home. I wouldn't be surprised to see a team maybe 60-75% of the starting lineup of Montreal. Don't be Bernier was not going to play, so I was going to. People were saying, "Oh, Bernier's finally going to play." No, he's yellow accumulation in the championship, so he's not going to play tomorrow night. But you get other players that are not necessarily having great playing time that could play with a Donadell, with the Malice, maybe, and then you have maybe Venegas starting, Piatti on the bench. So Venegas going to have his second start with the club, but more playing time to get used to it. Maybe you put a younger striker out there. There's not a lot of choices right now with McInerney being traded and all the injuries. But I feel Justin Mapp is going to make his first game after 5 months return, because he is known to be a great player in the championship. He loves that tournament. MVP once and scored great goals for the last 2 years in that championship. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mapp plays a lot tomorrow. If he comes at halftime, it wouldn't surprise me. And maybe he's going to score the game winner. That's that type of tournament he loves to play in. And Justin Mapp, he's the honorary Canadian of this team, because whenever he plays in the Canadian Championship, usually he determines the result of the game. So hopefully Justin Mapp starts as well. So that's my opinion of the lineup. Probably 60-70% of starting lineup, but there's not that much of depth in certain positions that you would want to rest people. Striker or starting midfielder, Montreal doesn't have 2-3 of them that are up there because of injuries. So maybe there you have the Venegas and still maybe Ajuro up top. But in the midfield, deeper, and the back line, I expect some changes.
Yeah, and Kevin, I've got another question for you just regarding the Impact themselves. There's been some talk that perhaps this is a team, a club that's built for success in tournaments like the Canadian Championship or the CONCACAF Champions League. Do you agree with that, or do you think they've just had maybe some good luck here and there in some of these tournaments that they've played in recently?
It was a little bit of good luck, but I think we're onto something because of the fact that Montreal has had great success on the counter and caught teams that way. And in a tournament format, teams are more defensive. So when you're more defensive and more conservative, you open yourself up maybe for the counter when you try to go for it late in games. And Montreal were able to get a lot of result off those counters. And those situations happen a little bit more often in tournament situation than in league games, where you don't go necessarily 100% all out. It's not a no tomorrow games during the season, so you don't get that same feeling of players trying to go for it at the counter like you do in those tournament formats. So I think it's one part of the reason why the Impact have had success in those tournaments, is because of the skill set the players have to maybe catch them on the counter with their speed and their finishing capabilities. Not going to lie, Montreal does not have a lot of chances. They've been burying a lot earlier this year, especially in the CONCACAF run. So those reasons combined, I think, is the reason why tournament have always been great for Montreal the last 3 years, because we're going for the three-peat in the next 2 games in that Amway Canadian Championship.
So Kevin, let's just play pretend for a second here, and let's just imagine that you were in Carl Robinson's staff. What would you recommend him as the keys so the Vancouver Whitecaps can beat the Montreal Impact on Wednesday night?
Well, that's a good question because if you're Carl Robinson, you need to decide what you want to do. Which priority do you have? You have three different playing fields in the next month in front of you: the CONCACAF Champions League, the Amway Canadian Championship, and Major League Soccer. Which one do you prioritize? Which one do you really want to do well in it? Which one maybe you need to put young players to get experience? They have so much lead in the league right now. If you're looking at a playoff position, they can afford to maybe rest players during league games and concentrate on the CCL and then Amway Canadian Championship. So it depends which things he needs to do. If he wants to continue on a great run and have the visibility next year as well, he needs to prioritize the championship, the Amway one. But if he wants to have the great result in a group of death in a way in a CCL with Seattle and Olympia, it's not going to be easy, so maybe he needs to prioritize the players to be informed for those games. So that's going to answer the lineup he does show up with in Montreal. Is he going to bring some baby Whitecaps with him? Probably. Is he going to get some more playing time for the players that are just outside of the starting 11, the players on the bench? Will they get more playing time in Montreal tomorrow night? Possibly. So I do believe that he's going to prioritize more the championship, the CONCACAF, and MLS and the Amway Championship this year. I think they're going to try to get away with just trying to get experience for players. Now that they have the first CONCACAF Champions League presence this year, the fans are happy about it in Vancouver. Of course, they never won the Voyageurs Cup, so maybe they're trying to get silverware, and we're going to use a strong lineup tomorrow. There's a lot of possibilities, and it's very intriguing for Vancouver. But my answer, going back to the question, Mark and Jorge, I believe that the Vancouver is going to bring a 50-50 team tomorrow night with some players that are on a good momentum, Rivero, Maddox, players that have been better than we expected from them. They might play, but they might play with some youngsters for them to get experienced.
Yeah, one guy to look out for if he makes the trip will be Marco Bustos, who's got 4 goals in 2 matches for WFC2 and saw a little bit of action last week in the CCL match against the Seattle Sounders. So I'm looking to see whether or not Marco will play tomorrow. And he made the USL Team of the Week this week, coincidentally. Anyways, Kevin, before we wrap it up...
Too.
Sorry?
Yeah, he made Team of the Week 2 times in a row.
That's correct. All right, Kevin, before we let you go here, can we tempt you for a prediction for Wednesday nights?
I go with the fact that Montreal needs a couple of goals to go to Vancouver and maybe rest a little bit of players and get experience for the young players. Maybe give some FC Montreal, 1 or 2 of them, the chance to play with the big club. So I expect Montreal to go all out at home, trying to get that possession, trying to get that a couple of balls behind probably one of the best keepers in the league this year, David Ousted. So I expect a 3-1 Montreal. That away goal will be crucial for Vancouver going forward. Montreal's been not that easy for them to keep the clean sheet, but they had a lot of chances to score lately. And I think mixed with the fact that Vancouver's going to have a little bit of young players, maybe closer in the back line, they're going to try to rest some players in the back line. So all those reasons together might make Montreal score 2-3 goals. They might leak 1. So 3-1 would be my prediction. And with 3-1, the game is still open for the return in Vancouver, with both teams will be confident with that result. So I think 3-1, and we'll still have a game in Vancouver next week.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Once again, guys, we've been talking to Kevin Laramie, host of the Two Solitudes, the Off the Woodworks podcast, the Five Rings podcast, and a whole lot more. Kevin, before you leave us, can you give us a website, a Twitter address, or anywhere where people can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My Twitter handle is @KevLaramie. You can reach me on kevinlaramie.com or canadiansoccernews.com. Every single show we produce is available on kevinlaramie.com, and any soccer-related show, you can go to Canadian Soccer News. And if there's anything, you can always email me at offthewhatworks@hotmail.com.
Excellent. Kevin, thank you so very much.
Always a pleasure, and looking forward to a great game tomorrow night. And we'll probably have some tripping on Twitter between the both of us.
I'm sure that's bound to happen. All right, guys, it's time for a quick break. We'll be back on the other side to talk a whole lot more about the Vancouver Whitecaps.